If you know, you know.
It's TCA in stereo.
From the city to the lake, we make a noise.
It's TCA summer sessions. It's TCA summer sessions. It's TCA summer sessions. Let's go. It's TCA summer sessions. It's TCA summer sessions. It's TCA summer sessions. Let's go. Let's go.
TCA Summer Sessions indeed. Welcome inside a brand new week of the Tall Can Audio podcast as summer's winding down. You look at the forecast, you look at the calendar, everything about it says coming to an unfortunate end within a week. A lot of people back to work, a lot of kids back to school, all of it right on the horizon. But happy you've made the time to join us here today for another edition of the TCA Summer Sessions with the voice of the Ottawa Senators, Dean Brown. We'll get to him in just a second. It's Matt Robinson along with you. Appreciate you kicking off your week with us here. Once again, you are in luck. This conversation with Dean was pre-recorded before my voice got to this point. My allergies are just kicking the shit out of me over the last 3 or 4 days. It hasn't been a whole lot of fun. Luckily, when we talked to Dean, that was not the case, so we'll get to that in just a second. Give us a follow on social media at Tall Can Audio. Would love to hear from you all there, and make sure you're following the podcast on whatever app you're hearing us right now. YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are. Make sure you're following along. As things are about to ramp up the home stretch of the Major League Baseball season with your Toronto Blue Jays, despite dropping a Sunday game to the Florida Marlins, still take that series and sit atop the AL East rather comfortably here at the moment. They're going to be right in the race coming down the stretch here in the final weeks of the Major League Baseball season. We are just weeks away from NHL training camps and the captain skates, all of that sort of stuff. The NFL season fires up in less than 2 weeks. It's a great time to be a sports fan. It's not a great time to be watching the summer fade away, but you can be distracted by the sports in your life, and we will be here for that. So make sure you are subscribed. I pointed out last week, for those of you who caught our conversation with Mike Comito on the downfall of the Toronto Maple Leafs Core 4 era. I mentioned before that show that we were doing a little bit of a switcheroo this week. Most of you count on it kind of being sports news talk on Monday, kind of getting caught up on everything that's topical, and then, sort of a guest midweek. We're flipping it this week just based on availability of our guests. So you're getting the summer sessions on Monday, a chat with Dean all about the Ottawa Senators. Frankly, their growing impact on USA hockey as both Canada and the United States kick off their pre-Olympic orientation camps this week. And Dean has a little to say about baseball. The run the Jays are on has done nothing to warm his heart to the sport. We'll get to all of that. And then we will talk to Steve Bunda later in the week. That is tentatively scheduled to drop on Thursday morning. Doesn't mean we won't be back between now and then with something else. Should the mood strike, should the occasion strike, should there be something newsy enough to talk about, we'll drop in before that. But count on hearing from Bunda on Thursday morning. Like I said, as we complete the switcheroo, that'll be the news talk show. This is the summer sessions with Dean Brown. So if you're here today expecting the newsy side of things, that's what's going on. That's why we have decided to flip it just on the availability of Dean and the availability of Bunda, and we'll get back to normal next week as so much of the world gets back to its unpleasant normal following Labor Day. We will do the same. With all that out of the way, we get to it right now. Let's talk to our friend Dean Brown, the voice of the Ottawa Senators. Let's bring him in, a guy who's always been kind enough to make time mid to late summer to come in and do the show and give us a bit of a hockey fix as we move through the late summer and inch ever closer back towards hockey season. The voice of the Ottawa Senators, Dean Brown, is here. How's it going, Dean?
Going pretty well, big fella. How about you? Off at the cottage and everything? Look at you, all relaxed and tanned and looking fantastic. I can't see you, but I'm just assuming.
Oh, yeah. You know me. I always look great. Just counting. It's getting to that gloomy part here, Dean, where there's only a couple of days left, and then I got to come back to the city. So, hardships all around, I suppose. There's a few different places we could start here, but you and I were just kind of riffing off air, and we'll pull the curtain back for the good listener. You and I are recording this just on the heels of the Toronto Blue Jays dropping 2 of 3 to the lowly Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, they are the first place Blue Jays. They're allowed to slip up here and there. They got a little bit of a pad on the lead, but it's frustrating. But I know you, for quite a while, have been far more frustrated with the game in general than simply the game I'm frustrated with today. And you were telling me you've put together essentially a list of things you don't care for. Would you mind hitting us with the date that this was written on?
As we were chatting, I went back on my computer and said, I wonder if I could find, it was for a talk show we were doing. And I forget who I was doing it with on the old TSN 1200, but I said, tomorrow when I come in for tomorrow afternoon show, I forget who it was with, must have been me and Gordy, or I don't know. Anyway, it was a summertime show. And they were talking about the fact, well, you used to play competitive baseball. I said, I know. I played, in Manitoba. I played junior baseball. It's not that I don't know the game. Baseball has bored me out of the game. And I remember saying to that day, I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to give you 10 things that baseball has to do to get me back. Now, the thing is, I found that original thing. I wrote it on June 2nd, 2011. And this thing is so old.
So it's carved in
it's
slate.
Written on.
Yeah,
This thing is so old. It's written. It's a Word 97 document. That's how old.
That's quite a find.
Yeah, there you go. So these are the 10 things. And I would like you to note as I go through them here, Matt, I would like to note that many of the things that I have said in this, in a slightly different form, baseball has actually done to speed up the game. So I wasn't totally off base.
Sure.
Even though when I was working for Rogers, when I was working for Sportsnet, I was telling my boss at the time, Rob Corte, about it. And he said, send that to me. I said, I want to give that to Buck. I said, you're going to give this to Buck Martinez? I said, he's not going to like it. He said, yeah, but I want him to. So I sent it to Ryan, and a couple of weeks later, I said, how did Buck respond to that? And Corte told me, he says, yeah, he thinks he's never met you, but he knows you're an idiot. I started laughing. I said, well, it was for a show. So, a little bit of it is tongue in cheek. But sure. I said, he said, Dean, he's a lifetime baseball purist. Yeah. He's never going to like the stuff you write. I said, well, I'm glad that. So Buck actually did read it, and Buck's determination, although he didn't actually critique each point, he just let Rob know that he thinks, even though he's never met me, I'm an idiot. So even though he's never met me, he was bang on. Bang on.
Well, Dean, even today, I'm a baseball guy, and some of Buck's takes are still etched out in the 70s or whatever else.
Yeah.
Like, he's never going to change. He's Butte with what he does.
On the same thing. Yeah. I think last year, the year before, it would have been the year before, I was doing a summertime talk show filling in. Like, if I'm filling in on talk shows in the summertime, you know what that means, on TSN 1200. That means there was literally nobody else to go on the air.
It's like when they call me on a Friday to guest. I was like, wow, man, how many people
they can't find
swing and miss down the ladder on?
I know. How many just said, no, get lost. So I was doing one last year, and I forget who I think it was on with Creature, and we were talking, and some of this stuff, you know me, I just like to inflame things. But anyway, I said to Creature, some of the things in baseball, and I talked about this list a little bit, but I said, use the right words. For God's sakes, use the right word. He said, what do you mean? I said, perfect game. He said, what's wrong with that? I said, if it's a perfect game, perfect is a very specific word. Perfect is without blemish. Perfect is could not be any better. Perfect is nothing. Blemish is perfect.
Oh, no.
I said, a pitcher can give up 7 hits, but if somebody catches the ball that's hit, it's not actually hit in the scorecard. So I said, a perfect game is when a pitcher throws and not one batter can hit a ball.
27 strikeouts.
You can't put it on the ground. 27 strikeouts. That's a perfect game, because perfect is a very specific word. I said, so they can call it a bunch of other things, but it's a misnomer to call it a perfect game. Well, Dave Naylor, Dave Naylor from TSN?
Yeah, of course.
Football guy. So he was coming on with us, and he had heard part of my discussion before he came on. And you got to understand, I've known Nails for many, many decades. I've known him for a long time. Comes on, he goes, yeah, I just heard your take on perfect game, Dean. I said, yeah. He says, you're an idiot. So I just repeated him. I said, Dave, the word perfect is a very, very specific word. He said, "Yeah, I know, you're an idiot." So anyway.
You didn't win him over, eh? You didn't convert him.
Yeah, didn't win Naylor over either. All right, you ready?
Let's hear it.
Here's the 10 things, and actually I think there's 11, but it's 10 things to fix Major League Baseball.
So your counting wasn't perfect.
Well, hold on. Let me just go here. One, Okay, my gamble was most Major League Baseball games run over 3 hours on average. For many people, it's just too long. The game runs at a snail's pace too many nights and afternoons.
Mm-hmm.
Blah, blah, blah. I play junior baseball. I can't watch a game on TV now. Here are 10 changes Major League Baseball could enact to make the game watchable again and bring me back. Number 1, when a player steps into the batter's box, he must stay there for the duration of his at-bat unless he is knocked down by a pitch or has to leave the box because of a running play at the plate. No backing out to tap your cleats, adjust your batting gloves, spit, play mind games with the pitcher, tighten the hitting elbow, shin, or wrist protectors, stand in there, take pitches, stop wasting my time. That's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, pitchers, and you can comment on each one or just at the end.
Well, so that is one that they've now limited the amount of both on the pitcher and the batter stepping out.
See?
It's all numbered now, and you get a So,
See? Okay. So all I'm saying is this was written in 2011.
Yeah.
2011. Anyway, number 2, pitchers may not leave the mound until an at-bat is over unless they leave for injury reasons or to play a ball. No more standing on the grass, bouncing the rosin bag off the back of their hand. No more rubbing the ball and spitting. No more walking off the mound to reset your hat. It's one of the reasons I love Roy Halladay at the time he was playing. None of that crap happens. He stands in and he pitches.
The beauty example of this, Dean, just within the last week, I think it was a Chris Bassett start for the Jays. It was over and done in like 2 hours, 8 minutes. And it reminded me of 2015, Mark Burley pitching for the Jays. And he was always known to pitch fast, and his games would always end. Yeah. And it just so happened that day he was pitching against someone else who worked fast, and it was a low-scoring game, and it was over pretty fast. And the media went to talk to him. He said, I got 5 minutes for you. He goes, if I got through the game this fast, I can get through you people this fast. My wife's waiting for me for a concert over at the Molson Amphitheater. And he goes, we're going to get there in time for Tim McGraw. So he had worked fast through the game to go see his concert. Yeah,
it doesn't have to be a laborious, never-ending procedure.
And this is another one they have addressed, right? The pitch clock and the number of disengagements. You're limited to 2 per at bat, and per inning. So,
now I want you to do me a favor while we go through these. Mm-hmm. You count the number that they have in some way actually enacted what I'm talking about. Remembering, I proposed these things in 2011. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Number 3. A new batter must be in the box no longer than 10 seconds after the previous batter left the box. Everyone knows the batting order. Everyone is ready, warmed up, and ready to hit. Why is the guy standing there rubbing the bat with a rag covered in goo when the previous batter is already back in the dugout?
No,
the world stops for you rubbing goo on the bat. Stop that.
That hasn't been addressed, but they have added and really enforced a clock between the half innings to force everybody to at least get moving here.
So in some way,
but they still wanted to allow everybody to sell ads, so they had to allow the TV people to have a bit of a break.
This is a big one. Number 4 is a big one for me. If you can't run in the equipment you wear to bat, don't wear it. Why does the game have to stop because a guy gets to first base, calls timeout, so he can take off his batting gloves and switch to his sliding gloves, change from his hitting helmet to his running helmet, remove all of his protective elbow, shin, wrist, and ankle gear while everybody stands there? He spits 3 times before telling the ump that he's ready to go again. If you can't run in it, leave it in the dugout.
I agree with you on this one, and it has not been addressed.
Yeah, okay. Crazy. Number 5, you are not allowed to stop the game because you're dusty. If you slide into second base and you get dirty, that's life. Why does the entire game stop so that you can wipe dust off your uniform? 12-year-olds just keep running. They're unaware they're dusty. You can play dusty.
Okay.
Number 5.
I like that.
Yeah. You can play dusty. You don't need. Number 6, each team is granted 10 timeouts per game, totally 30 seconds each. A pitching change gets 60 seconds because the guy has to come in from the bullpen, but no more than that. Number 7, the pitcher coming in from the bullpen must run, not walk. If you're a pro athlete and you can't run 400 feet, this sport isn't for you.
So this one, that one's actually gone the other way. It's gotten very dramatic, like from a number of closers across baseball. They give them like big intros with light shows and special music, and it's like the Undertaker coming in to the wrestling, to the Royal Rumble or something like that. So that one has become a little more production-y and a part of the show. It hasn't sped up.
Yeah, I would add to that one, my 7B would be no golf cart. Like if you need to be driven, in, like get out of the game.
If a golfer can walk 18 holes, you can run in from the bullpen.
The golf cart is for somebody in center field who suffered a hideous injury and can't walk back to the medical room. Right. It's not for you to get to the mound. Okay, number 8. Calling all the players to the mound to talk to them with their gloves over their mouths is a joke. If you need more than 30 seconds to have something explained to you during a game, you're not smart enough to be a major leaguer.
Okay.
Number 9, for relief pitchers. Are you for that one?
Yeah, they have limited the number of mound visits, and anyone can come in for that, but they've also implemented the pitch comm, right? The little radio system that so a lot of the infielders have that, and they get the signal as well, so they don't need to have as many of these mound visits. So that has been sped up a little bit.
Okay, number 9, for relief pitchers. No practice pitches while all of us sit there and wait for you to get ready. The relief pitchers have been in the bullpen for hours. They know when they're likely to get called up. They've been warming up for 20 to 30 minutes, and in fact, we often see them stop warming up because they're getting tired from warming up. If you're not ready to pitch when you get to the mound, they shouldn't have called you in. And just a reminder, this tradition started when outfielders came in, and yes, they needed to get their bearings on a raised mound because they'd been playing center field in the earlier part of the game. Mm-hmm. Also, in the old days, there wasn't a bullpen because there weren't that many players. And the places when they did start introducing the bullpen, even when they had one, they didn't have the same height and distance as the game field. So that's no longer the case. Every bullpen has a mound that is exactly regulation size with a distance that is exactly regulation size. So run to the mound, throw the damn ball.
So this one is another one that's actually gotten worse, Dean. I was just talking to some listeners about this the other day. More and more often, if you're way down, they don't even bother. They don't want to waste a bullpen arm. So they just bring in whoever's on the bench that day, and he's the backup first baseman, and he throws pitch. So he wasn't out in the bullpen warming up. He's got to get out on the mound and throw some warm-up pitches for his 78-mile-an-hour fastball and whatever else he's going to throw. That one has become actually more problematic.
Okay, number 10 is one that I've been told Buck Martinez thought was my dumbest of my long list of dumb ideas. He thought this is the one where I imagine when he was reading it, he thought, this is a really dumb guy. This one, number 10, is one where he goes, well, this guy's an idiot. I think this is where I went from dumb guy to idiot. Okay. Number 10, why is a baseball game delayed or canceled because it rains? I understand if there's lightning, but rain, yes, playing conditions deteriorate, but you can still throw a ball, hit a ball, catch a ball. Since baseball is a stats-driven game, I understand how it would screw up all the numbers, and certainly groundskeepers would hate it, but come on, you can't play in the rain. My 9-year-old daughter plays soccer in the rain, and she's never melted yet.
You know exactly what the answer to this one is, Dean. Those guys are making $20 million, and somebody blows out an ankle in a puddle, and the owners are all pissed. So yeah, we will baby them.
Yeah, play in the rain. Suck it up. Bonus number, I was right. I did. I called this one the bonus 11. Mm-hmm. This will not speed up the game, but it will definitely get more women to watch baseball. Stop all the spitting, for heaven's sakes. Japanese leagues seem to be able to play without constant spitting. The biggest problem is the game is so slow that cameras always have to show dugout shots to fill time, and more dugout shots means more spitting. Mm-hmm. More women would watch baseball if they didn't have to endure the sight of tobacco slop running down a guy's chin right after he spits some brown bile into a clear plastic bottle for everyone's visual enjoyment throughout the game. This one actually wasn't my idea. Sitting beside my wife watching a game, these are all points that she made. I had not thought of it, but it's all true. Make these now 11 changes to baseball, and I will once again come back and watch it regularly and love it again. Until then, baseball, you and I remain divorced.
So in our family, Dean, there is a player on the Toronto Maple Leafs who is known across the family as Sweetie Pie.
Sweetie Pie.
Yeah. And it's my mom and my great aunt adopted this name for William Nylander. And I know
yeah.
your old traditional hockey fan would call him that for all kinds of derogatory reasons. They just think he's cute. And that's the extent of it. So they've been trying to get my niece and my sisters and whatever to watch more hockey and whatever. And so my niece sits down with us and she's like, which one is Sweetie Pie? And he just happens to be showing up on the screen, sitting on the bench, and he turns and spits just a huge... And she's like, ew! So that one isn't limited to baseball, I don't think. Even the Sweetie Pies in the game are gross when it comes to spitting.
Yeah. I have to admit, Matt, I had not even thought about that because mine was more, the list was basically about time.
Sure.
And spitting doesn't waste any time. Yeah. But in all honesty, I had never even thought about that until my wife said, like, I would watch more baseball, but my God, like, and what is with the bushels of sunflower seeds? I said, well, I don't know. Like, when I played, we ate sunflower seeds and spit. She said, well, it's gross. So that one I added as the 11th one, even though it wasn't my idea. But like Sue was the one who told me, like, more women would watch this if it wasn't so gross.
Yep.
I said,
I think that's fair.
Well, I said, that's number 11. Then I'll throw that in. That's number 11.
Stop. Yeah, they're always adjusting their jocks and whatever else, like all of that stuff. But you're right. It was always a timing thing. And it was especially like if the Jays were going in, especially to Fenway or Yankee Stadium, that's a 4-hour game every time. And you're like, it makes me crazy, especially when the Jays were bad. Now the pitch clock has sped it up. The number of games that go past even 3 hours is way down. So it's come along. But it's far from perfect. We can agree on that.
Hockey, baseball, and 2.5 hours.
That's enough.
That's enough. 2.5 hours. That's enough. Yeah. If you can't get yourself in, and not every game is going to be 2.5 hours, but you got to shoot for 2.5 hours. I think I don't know what it was last year. I think a couple of years ago, the average NHL game was like 2 hours, 21 minutes. That's beauty. That's right where it needs to be. It's 2:20, 2:30, long games, 2:40.
Well, they tell you a 7 p.m. start, but it's always more like 7:10. And if you're done by kind of 9:35, 9:40, that's plenty. Yeah. That's fine.
That's plenty. And gives the broadcasters time to wrap up a game before the top of the hour and put a bow on it and get you ready for the next game. Like that's the time. But like these 3, 4, 5 hour games, it's like, come on, like who has that kind of time? Anyway. Well, rant is over.
That's okay. Well, you know what? I think at the moment that I'm sitting here, I'm happy to have that rant because I'm a little annoyed with my team after dropping 2 or 3 to a pretty bad team. So this is well timed for me. But we should talk a little bit of hockey.
What?
And yeah, I know. And before we get to the Sens, one of the things I wanted to touch on, and it is Sens adjacent, is the list of Team USA invitees to training camp. The Sens, I think everybody knew, had 2 slam dunks with Sanderson and Brady Tkachuk that would be at least invited to camp if aren't already shoo-ins to be on the team. I was a little surprised that Shane Pinto got the invite, not shocked. I will say I'm really surprised that Lane Hutson of the Habs didn't get an invite just to camp. And I think if we look at how the roster is likely to play out for the U.S., like we know Quinn Hughes is going to quarterback PP1 at the Olympics, and we know they have Zach Werenski, and how many smallish offensive defensemen, especially a guy like Lane Hutson, who at that age is still going to be a little turnover prone, do you want on the team? But I do wonder why they didn't find it useful to at least have him to camp, to be around that caliber of player and be around that level of guy and just for future exposure. I mean, they brought Luke Hughes. I would have thought Lane Hutson has every bit as good a case as Luke Hughes to be at this thing.
Yeah, I agree. I got to be honest, I wasn't surprised about Pinto, and mostly, Matt, because last year, and just being around the league and talking to people, he was on Team USA's radar, as a guy that is going to in the future be a part of Team USA. And I think the way he played in the playoffs caught some people's eyes. So I don't know if he's going to make the team, but I wasn't surprised he was invited. So I wasn't surprised at all about any of the 3 Ottawa guys that got invited. But I'm 100% with you on Lane Hutson. I tweeted that when the list came out, not because somebody else made the point to me. Well, like if you're looking for smallish playmakers, as you mentioned, they already got Hughes, they got Werenski, they got Fox coming to the camp. And my point was, you're talking about making the team.
Right.
And I said, I don't look at this as him having a chance to make this team this time. But it is not uncommon for Team Canada, or in the past Team USA or Team Sweden. We've seen it at times as well, where they bring guys in for the camp to kind of see what's expected, what the level is, to kind of get on the radar screen. Guys who you think are going to be a part of your national program going forward. After the Olympics are over, is he a guy, if Montreal doesn't make the playoffs or they're an early out, is he a guy that you'd bring in for the World Championships and start getting him involved in the national program stuff? Down the road, is he a guy, that's going to replace a guy like Fox, for example, in Four Nations play? So just a player of his caliber with the kind of rookie year that he had. I was surprised that they didn't bring him in just to get a taste of it, just to be around those guys and see what it is. And for Team USA to have a look at a very young player that is almost no chance of making your team, but just see how he looks in camp compared to the guys who are on your team. And so for that reason, I'm like you. I was quite surprised that he didn't at least get an invite to the camp just to sniff around and have a look and see, what it's like and what it's about. If they really think that, he could be a big part of what Team USA is going to be in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever it is. So I understand they want to have numbers, but at a camp, you can invite as many people. There's a restriction on your roster for the Olympic tournament, but there's no restriction on how many players you choose to bring to your evaluation camp.
Well, the one that stands out to me, Dean, is going all the way back, and you and I are old enough to remember the 2002 Olympics. When they had their camp in 2001, Jerome McGinley wasn't invited. Someone got hurt at the last minute and couldn't make it, and they asked him to drive down from Prince Albert and come in overnight and participate. And they had also invited Simone Gagne and Eric Brewer, and neither one were really expected to make the team. It was just, let's have some of these young guys around your Lemieux and your Isermans and your McInneses and these sorts. And then, lo and behold, by the time February rolls around, all three of those guys have had the type of year that have landed them on your roster. I don't think Lane Hutson is making this team, but heaven forbid one of your other guys who would run power play 2 gets hurt or something, and now he hasn't been. Like, I understand none of these invites, if you didn't get invited, doesn't mean you're off their radar and you can't go to the tournament, but you could end up having missed out on just letting him get used to the guys and the pace. And I thought it was an odd decision.
Well, you're right. It doesn't. Again, 100% agree with you. You and I are in 100% lockstep on this one. And you're right. It doesn't mean if you don't get invited to this camp that things might not happen that gets you on this team, later on. I remember the World Junior team, Jorian Donovan didn't make the team, wasn't on the team. They had an injury and he flew in, joined the team, and ended up winning a medal. You know what I mean? Like, and playing the day he got there.
09, Evander Kane had just gotten off his plane from Ottawa back to Vancouver, having been cut, and they said, actually, we need you to come back. You're back on the team. Like, it's
exactly. So that does happen, but it does say something to the player and to people like us who are just observers. It does say something to us when you don't invite him. Yeah. Because it has people like us saying, this is a guy who was the best rookie defenseman in the NHL last year, high skill level, great escapability to be able to survive an NHL season. Like, how is this not even a thought that you might bring him in? So it does create questions that and it puts the kid in a bad spot too, because when camp opens for Montreal this year, and he's in front of the Montreal media, there's going to be a question, how to feel to not even get invited to Team USA's camp. And he's going to say that, well, just to hope one day in the future, he's going to, and we all know it. We all know the question's coming. We all know what he's going to answer, but why does he have to answer that stuff? It's so much easier to just have him come to camp, take part in it, like whatever, give him the swag, give him the bag with all the shirts and hats and, the whole thing. And then when he gets to Montreal's camp, hey, how was he evaluated? Hey, I got to play beside this guy, and this guy. It's a fantastic experience for me. I understand it's not my time to play, but man, oh man, did I learn a lot. And, it just so much changes the narrative unless, and I can't believe this, but unless there's a faction within USA Hockey that just doesn't believe down the road that a player like Lane Hutson will have a spot on the national team, that he's not the kind of player they want to have.
Tough sell, like based on
Matt, I can't believe that could be the case, but like that, because that to me seems crazy, just crazy.
Yeah, we've got 1 year of of watching him play pro, and he looked perfectly comfortable. You give him a couple of years, it feels like a type of guy who might be your Phil Housley or your whatever down the road, right? So,
yeah.
Talk to me a little more about the three Sens that are going. And look, as we mentioned, obviously Brady was a shoe-in from day one based on, actually, I think he was named in the top 6 there that everybody had to present, was he not?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and then Jake Sanderson wasn't initially on the radar for the Four Nations, but he ends up stepping in, and by the time it's all said and done, he's carrying big minutes and playing important minutes for the Americans, so no surprise that he was invited to camp. I think most of us expect he'll be on the team, especially with the expanded Olympic rosters. You kind of touched on Shane Pinto. What does it mean for these 3 guys to go? What do you think the likelihood is of a Pinto making the team, or is he more of what we are talking about with the opportunity Hudson should have had of being invited along to be part of this for now, and we'll sort of keep an eye on you, but maybe not as likely as the other 2 to make the team?
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. It's, a guy they're looking at for down the road as Team USA evolves, maybe not this year, but, next Olympics, where is he going to be in his career? Still a very young player. But, the other side, I think you're right about the other 2, they're locks. And in Brady, it's not just that he's locked to have a spot. It is very, very clear that, Team USA is looking for Brady and his brother to lead this team.
Yeah.
It's not just about being a couple of guys who are, there for,
Going into Four Nations, did you expect we'd get there this fast? Like that he would be all of a sudden one of the top poster boys for USA hockey?
You know what? This is going to sound really, I don't know what it sounds, maybe arrogant. But yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Mostly because in any competitive best on best hockey, any player like Brady Tkachuk instantly becomes a dominant player. And he becomes a dominant player because in best on best tournaments, every team has a far higher level of elite skill level players than any normal NHL team would have. You have the opportunity to put the best players. That's who you put on there.
Sure.
And by and large in this game, players with offensive abilities and skill players, they get a higher placement. So when you have a player like Brady Tkachuk, who can play with skill players and is a skill player, but also brings a pugnacious attitude and the ability and the willingness and the want to play a really physical game, that is a great, big, huge unicorn. And a kind of player who can dominate in that kind of a game, because let's face it, most elite level offensive players don't like to play that kind of game, and they don't like to have guys play.
Canada was running McDavid, Marner, and Point, which is an elite line, but they're not bringing anything like physically what Brady's bringing.
No, exactly. Yeah. So I did think that, once that tournament started, Brady was going to be an X factor kind of player, simply because in those kinds of tournaments, it's very rare that you have that type of player there. Because, I don't think we're telling tales out of school here. There's not a lot of times when you get players with that kind of size and physicality who also have the ability to be a skill player and to play with skill players and, carry that kind of a role. It's not very regular, an occurrence. So I did think Brady would have a huge impact in that whole thing. I really did. And he did, he really did. And if he wasn't injured, it would have been even more impactful,
Well, this is it. We were seeing at times the USA was clearly trying to get to a point where it was Eichel between the 2 Tkachuk brothers, and injuries just caught up to them to a point where, especially with Matthew and obviously Brady after the fact, like they were clearly not at their top, but that's a scary looking line. If all 3 are healthy going into an Olympics, there's not many. Like Matthew and Brady are different types of players, but they're both the type of player that most national teams aren't bringing to a tournament like this, which is a little scary.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Like you look at the way rosters are set up for a tournament like that, and we all talk about, and it's a normal thing to talk about because it's true every single time, is you're going to have players on every one of those teams who on their regular team, they are the star. Mm-hmm. They are on the first power play unit. They're top 3 on their team, if not number 1 in point production. And in a tournament like that, they're asked to be a third line penalty killer.
Sure.
That's what happens. That's the way it is. So, there's a whole bunch of things that don't normally happen. And Brady Tkachuk is something that doesn't normally happen in tournaments like that, where you have players, like a Brady Tkachuk that get that kind of a role in that kind of a tournament. It's just not a regular occurrence, So, I wasn't surprised. And when with Sanderson, I wasn't surprised either. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when Team USA makes its team for the Olympics and Jake Sanderson is in the top 6. He's playing. He's not a 7 or an 8.
Right.
Because when I look down and, you're judging roles and you're judging, who shoots what side. And, I see him as a guy that is going to be one of their top 6 players.
Well, by the end of that tournament, they already looked nervous to be using the Hannafin-Fox pairing. Now Quinn Hughes returns to the, hopefully, fingers crossed, everybody healthy. Quinn Hughes is back on probably your top pair, pushes everybody down a little bit. We'll see who they pair Sanderson with. But I think they clearly, by the end of that tournament, had more faith in the late invite Jake Sanderson than they did in the 2 guys playing on that third pair.
Yeah, and if you're just looking at the guys they've invited to the camp, there's the ones that you talked about that are obvious. Zach Werenski, that's obvious. And you look at Hughes, that's obvious. Adam Fox had a down year last year. Yeah. And to be honest with you, right now, if he had the year he had last year, I wouldn't have him on my top 6. But right. He's a former he's a former Norris Trophy winner, so you got to show him that respect and see where his game is.
Sure, he deserves the invite you're looking, to camp. Yeah.
For sure, absolutely, and even to make the team. But if he was playing the way he played last year, and I'm Team USA, you've got guys who are playing better.
Yeah.
If you just throw out the lefty-righty thing, I would just ask you questions. And there's got to remember on this list there are no bad defensemen. These are all great players, but right now, is Sanderson better than Brock Faber? I say, yeah. Is he better than Noah Hannafin? Yeah, I think he is. Is he better than Seth Jones? No, Seth Jones is a really good veteran, but right now, I would put Brady ahead of him. Yeah. Is he better than Jackson Lacombe?
Yeah.
I know, but is he better than Jason Lacombe? Yeah, for sure. He's a better player. Yeah. Where Ryan McDonough is right now with his age, I say, he's better.
Yeah, foot speed.
I think Sanderson's
Olympics would be a problem for McDonough, I think.
Brady Shea, is he better than him? Is he better than Alex Vlasic? So there's lots of guys where you can say who your top guys are, but then you start going down your list and you go, is he better than list?
Right.
And when I started going through my list, I had Sanderson as my number 5. Okay, so, not doing righty-lefty. And righty-lefty will come into it when they're actually picking the team.
Yeah.
But when I was just looking at who are my best defensemen if I'm Team USA, for me, Sanderson was number 5. And everybody's going to have, it's subjective, eh? Everybody's going to have their own thing. And I took a lot of slack last year after the 4 Nations when I still say it. Jacob Slavin was turned into some kind of a god. I said he's a very good defenseman who had an outstanding tournament. And again, I know people are going to come at me with pointy sticks here, but right now, if you told me you're going to start the year and you've got team X, Y, or Z, whatever your team is, and you're choosing between Jacob Slavin or Jake Sanderson, and I know I'm fully aware that people are, like Buck Martinez going to call me an idiot. I'm taking Jake Sanderson, and that's not saying that Jacob Slavin isn't a really good player. He is. But I just don't think people have seen enough to know what kind of an exceptional player Jake Sanderson is, and is getting better because he's on the upside. He's not in his prime. He hasn't gotten to his prime yet. No. He's still in the growing part of his career. That's the other thing. He is as good as he is right now. He is not a finished product. So again, I realize there'll be plenty of ridicule. You heard that stupid Brown said he thinks that Slavin is anyway. But I'm being honest. I think right now, reputation aside, experience aside, Slavin's older. He's got more experience. Absolutely, big game experience for sure. Absolutely. But if you're asking me just straight up, right now, today, who's the better defenseman? I would take Jake Sanderson. I really would.
Can you tell me what, if anything, it matters for the Senators as a franchise to have 3 guys at the Team USA camp. Look, the team is obviously on the come up, finally took that big step forward last year and got into the playoffs. And now all of a sudden, we've got Brady Tkachuk, as we've talked about a second ago, not just being a guy invited to camp that everyone assumes will make the team. He is a key piece, a build-around piece, and a piece that this will be marketed on, that USA fans got to know a little bit better last year at that Four Nations because he's been playing in a smaller Canadian market. Jake Sanderson, I'm not sure if he got quite the same boost in profile. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that Brady did. But having 3 players invited to Team USA camp, does that register in any meaningful way if you're the Ottawa Senators and you know the way you market things, or is it just kind of a nice thing to be able to say we got 3 guys at the camp?
No, it's way more than nice. What it tells people around hockey is that you've drafted well and you've developed well, because these are 3 players that you evaluated, that you drafted, that you developed, and they're now elite players as measured by hockey bodies outside of your own franchise. It's not your own franchise bias that creates this impression of what they are. People outside of your organization have identified them as elite level players. That's a great pat on the back to the Senators scouting staff, to the general manager who drafted them, to the head scout that went up to the microphone, to the development people who developed them. That's a huge pat on the back to all those people that you got 3 players from one team, up to the elite level. And then you look at the team and you take it, a step further back and you start looking at, well, what about the other guys? Tim Stützle is going to play for Germany, and then you make it 4, and I know he didn't get an invite, but, Drake Batherson, his numbers tell you that he's one of the better Canadian right wingers in the NHL, even though he didn't get his due from Team Canada. But, there's going to be a look at those kinds of things as well. Is Matt and Paolo going to be asked by his country to go back and play nationally again after him getting the call up to play? In Four Nations.
Well,
so
not drafted and developed, but Allmark, another Senator who's going to be in the mix here, at least for Sweden. That's kind of putting your franchise on the map here a little bit. Right?
Yeah, not drafted and developed, but a player that being, a guy that was out there being identified as a guy who had that kind of potential and potential to play in the NHL. And now as we found out, to be able to play at an international level as well. So, it just shines a light, on your entire organization. So it is, to my way of thinking, Matt, I don't know how they're going to approach it as an organization, but I'm sure they're going to pump their chest a little bit because I think they should. Yeah. I don't think it's just we got some guys going to the Olympics. That's great. And anyway, here's another picture of the new logo. I don't think it's going to get blown off because it's important. And like I said, it's important to the fans.
Then we all got to cheer against them in February. So
well, yeah, but you know what? I think it's one of those things though for a lot of fans, and I have lots of friends who are fans. They don't mind that because as they're sitting there screaming against Team USA, but when Brady scores, he scores for Team USA. But that's our guy. That's my captain. Sure. And so, even when that happens, there's a certain amount of chest pumping that it's one of your guys, and that is never bad for the organization. Yeah. And like I said, just some internal chest pumping about what your franchise has been able to do and develop and coach, and in a very short period of time, it tells you, what a guy like Travis Green is, the impact that he's been able to have on 3 pretty important players who've all progressed in a major way in a very short time with him. So there's so many lights that get shone on different areas when you have players like that ascend to that level of play, or at least that level of consideration. And so that's never a bad thing.
I'm curious what you made of the offseason that the Sens had. It was pretty quiet, but I think a lot of us expected that it might be based on the cap constraints and the amount of movement that had gone on beforehand, in bringing in Allmark the year before. I don't think anyone thought radical overhaul was going to be necessary this offseason based on the step forward that the team did take. I really liked the Jordan Spence acquisition. I think there's room for that guy to grow and become better in your organization. Beyond that, not a whole lot more in terms of what was added. Lars Eller is a nice depth piece, I think, that can help. Obviously, you get Claude Giroux brought back into the mix, and that seems to be a nice fit. Did you expect that there might be a bigger shakeup this offseason, or is this sort of the way you thought it would play out?
I kind of thought that's the way it was going to play out for a couple of reasons. Number one, I hate that this is a reality, but it is the reality. Every decision in this league now is based on money. So when you knew at the end of last year, when Steve Staios held his media conference, and he said that they wanted to, for the first time during his tenure, they were in a position to be able to manufacture cap space. They weren't going to spend to the cap. They were going to basically leave some space open for themselves. So if later on in the year they wanted to make a move near the trade deadline, they'd have a gap. They'd have some space. They wouldn't be sitting there, when they got to call guys up during the regular season. They call them up from Belleville the morning of the game because they need the cap space, and they can't waste it calling them up a day before because one day's wages adds up over the course of the year.
Yeah, it does.
They and many teams were that close to the cap that they had to do stuff like that. So having that space, that breathing room, that told you that there probably wasn't going to be a deal. The only kind of deal that could have gone on that would have been a big splash would have been big player coming in for big player going out.
Yeah.
And just the way we saw the marketplace in the NHL from the trade deadline on and then through free agency, just didn't see any big deals.
It's like nobody has to, right? Like with the cap suddenly jumping up, everyone who was in a jam now isn't. So I'm going to wait and see.
Yeah. So knowing that it was unlikely that anybody was going to be able to do one, and so far nobody has been able to do one of them. So that's kind of come to fruition. I didn't think it was possible. So number one, the money, giving yourself a little bit of cap space. So that was the plan. And knowing that doing a big player for big player deal was going to be pretty difficult. That was number two. And number three, I look at the big players that they have that other teams would want, and I just didn't see any way that Steve Staios would be giving them up. I just like when you start going through it, you say to yourself, well, who are the big players that other teams would want? Well, we all know who they are.
Yep.
Stutzla, Tkachuk, Sanderson,
yep.
Chabot. You start running through your list. Well,
why would Ottawa want to trade them?
Well, yeah, so what deal around the league could you reel it, not some kind of a, let's play general manager for an afternoon, get a pen and paper and let's do it. But I mean, in real life, what general manager is going to trade you a player or a group of players that's enough of a value that's going to convince you that it's worth trading Tim Stützle?
Right.
What deal is that? Is it possible? Well, yeah, God, everything's possible. But sir, so if you're going to move Brady Tkachuk, what could some other GM possibly give you to make you think that it's a good idea to do that? So when you start doing that, you say, well, yeah, big player for big player. Well, what GM is going to trade you something big enough to think that any of those kinds of deals?
Well, and the Sens really just did it at the deadline, right? Cousins for Norris, and we'll see how Cousins fits in here when he gets a full training camp and a full season. But that's a pretty seismic change in the core group, and you got to give that time to play out and see what it's going to look like. The rest of the team has earned a little bit of whatever you'd want to call a little bit of leash or a little bit of loyalty by getting into the playoffs and pushing it to 6 games. I don't know. I looked around. I saw it the early days of the summer. I kept seeing the name Mason McTavish out there from Anaheim and Sens fans wanting to get in on that. I didn't really understand. And look, I don't blame them. Any fan base would be interested in getting their hands on a Mason McTavish. I didn't really see what the combination there was going to be and what you'd give up that Anaheim, who also now wants to step forward, they're not looking for more picks and prospects. They want to get out of the basement. What does that deal look like? Are you flipping Cousins again all of a sudden?
Yeah.
But
that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing, though, Matt. It would have to be a lot more than Cousins to get Mason McTavish.
And you're not flipping Stützle for McTavish, so we're sort of already out of options, right?
That's too big. But I understand why people love that. He's from here. He started playing hockey in Canada. He started in Europe because his dad was playing in Europe. But he really his hockey started here in Carp, and his dad works for the team. His dad Dale is a scout for the Senators. Yep. He lives here during the off season. He lives lives in Stittsville. He grew up. He's
Oh, sure, it'd be a great story, but
yeah, for sure. He's a neighbor of mine. Like growing up, they lived right across the street from us. So, I tell people all that when he got drafted, I've had people say to me, "You know him a little bit." I said, "I knew Mason when he didn't know how to operate a fork." You know what I mean? Like. I knew him when he was in the pool and he still had the floaties on because he couldn't swim yet.
probably got a
I've known
couple
him a long time.
dents in your car from him missing the net in the driveway.
Absolutely. So did that story make for a great story?
It would.
Absolutely.
Of course it would.
Would the Senators love to have Mason McTavish?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you tell me what deal Anaheim would accept that Ottawa could live with to get Mason McTavish, and that's when the conversation becomes hard.
Yep.
He's a former first-round draft pick who is an elite player now and will only get better because of his age. So, there's always going to be a marketplace for Mason McTavish, but that doesn't mean Ottawa should get in on that. Well, that's an easy thing to do. We'll throw some things on paper and send Anaheim our list and see if they want Hunter Shepard, backup goalie we just signed, and see if we can give him a second in 2028. Sure. And, you have to be realistic. You have to be realistic.
In the group chat, and a buddy of mine just brought it up here, Dean, the other day, because I'm like everybody else. Midsummer, you're throwing around ridiculous trade possibilities. Andy Frost, after every Leaf game, used to host Leaf Talk. There was always a guy who it was Nick Antropov, Wade Belak, and a third for Rob Blake. And you're like, okay, good luck with that.
What?
Right? Let's see how someone was going to phone in, and it was always Antropov, Belak, and a second or third for whatever superstar was on the block that day. You're like, good luck to you, man.
The only thing was, when Andy was still doing the PA and doing the stuff on 107, I don't think that his son had been drafted by Philadelphia
yet.
So, because we always used to joke, all the trade possibilities he always talked about never included his son.
No, that's right. The Leafs talk would go late into the evening, and he would always be able to point out which callers had likely been into the sauce a little bit before they called in with their trade proposals. So those were fun times. Look, I'm curious, heading into training camp, I know we won't be too long before we're seeing your walk-in videos back to the arena as camp opens up. What will you be looking at? There's always a guy or two or a story or two. I think the Sens roster is largely set, as most teams are when they arrive to camp. But who will you be looking at early on as the captain skates and the camp opens up here?
First and foremost, Nick Jensen. I want to see where he is. Is he going to be able to start the season? Or if not, how he looks and where the rehab is. Then I guess I would look at Jordan Spence right away, because I think it's probably most likely that if Nick Jensen can't start the season, that would likely be Jordan Spence's spot.
Did you like that pickup?
And so, I really like that pickup. Yeah. I thought that was a great pickup. And, LA was in a vulnerable spot because, Brad Clark, with Clark, there was going to be one of those two get that spot, and Clark had the inside track, so they couldn't keep both. So they're in a situation where they didn't want to, but they had to, they had to move one. One had to go. And so right place, right time for the Senators. And really, I think fits a perfect need for where they are right now. And the other thing that's really good for them is that it's not a crazy number. It's $1.5 million, and he's an RFA. So if he fits in and there's a role and you see this thing working, then you've had a year to find out if you like each other. Find out if, and if you like each other and you want him to be a part of something, then you give him a qualifying offer, or you can, try and extend him, and, he can decide what he likes. He's not a UFA, so he can't go wherever he wants, but, you've got a year-long look-see at what it is and where it's going, and that gives you more comfort, I think, if you want to do that. You've got a space. But you also have to look at the timing of, what's coming up, because on that right side, if you look right now today, you're saying that your NHL guys are going to be Zub, Jensen, Spence, and Matt and Palo. Yep. There's your 4 right side guys. But Lassie Thompson is now back in the organization. Yeah. Is he a guy that's ready to challenge for, that 7th spot, that backup spot on the right side? And the other thing that you have to find out in the next year, 2 years, is how close is Carter Yakimchuk to being able to make the NHL as a right shot defenseman? Because last year, based on his play in the preseason, he was ready to play in the NHL. Now, I still think it was the best idea to send him back to junior because I think going to the World Juniors was really going to help him. When that didn't happen, I thought that was, pardon me, but I thought that was a joke. I don't mean to criticize Hockey Canada, but I thought that was a joke.
The results
and I'm
would
not
bear
the only
out
one.
The team was not successful, so clearly there were some bad decisions made.
Yeah, and what were they lacking? Oh, yeah, offense from the back end. Yeah, that was a problem. And anyway, I don't want to get into that because I didn't. But I thought that was, and I'm not the only one. But people a lot more qualified than me also thought it was a joke. But anyway, in the here and now, so you have to a first-round draft pick under contract. Where's Carter Tkachuk? So you have to have some mobility, on that side. Where's Artem Zub? He's got a year left after this one, and he never skated the same after breaking his ankle last year. This year, is he fully recovered? Has he got that jump back? Because how many times do you see people catch him?
Yeah.
He suffered an injury and it affected his skating. And as much as everybody loves him, if that's going to get worse, not better, that changes your long-term view.
Sure it does,
as a general manager, these are all things that you have to constantly evaluate and rank. So having a little bit of an ability to be able to, have some play in your lineup on that side is something that's pretty important.
Well, let's cut right to it. Like how important, like how open would you be if it was your decision to make to Carter Tkachuk playing out of camp and starting the year with? Do you believe it's important for a defenseman to go to Belleville and play some pro hockey there first, or if he has another camp that looks as good as last year's, would you be prepared to say no? You've made the team. We're going to do this.
I don't believe playing in the AHL is bad for any player. The AHL is the best development league on the planet, and any player that goes to the AHL has not been demoted. He's been given a platform to be able to develop. Erik Karlsson played in the AHL. We've talked about this before, Matt. I always have a problem when you get on social media, when some young player is sent to the AHL, there's this litany of who failed. Well, they shouldn't have drafted him that high. But they haven't developed him properly. Right. Nobody's given him a chance to play. Hold on. Just because you get sent from the best league in the world because you're not quite ready as a teenager to play in the NHL, it doesn't mean you or anybody else has failed. It just means you need a little more time to be NHL ready. That is not a sin. And so I rebel against this whole idea that if you're a first-round draft pick and you get sent down, before your 20th birthday, then somebody screwed up drafting you. Or I hate that kind of talk. Mm-hmm. But my point with him this year is this team is in a different place now, and I don't believe any player suffers by being sent to the NHL. Right. But the inverse of that is where this team is right now. This team is not on a development plane now. Mm-hmm. This team is not, we want to develop. Development is important. Yep. But this team now is at the place where if through the preseason and training camp, you're one of the best 7 defensemen and they choose to start the year with 7, I don't know, they might start with 8. Sure. Hell, they might start with 6, but let's just assume they're going to start with 1 extra forward and 1 extra D. That's a fairly common thing. Mm-hmm. So if out of training camp and the preseason games, Carter Tkachuk is one of your 7 best defensemen, your 4th or 3rd best right shot defenseman, then he starts the season in the NHL. This evaluation process, when you get to this level now, is if you're ready to play and you show us you're ready to play, I don't care where you were drafted, I don't care how much money you make, and I don't care how many pro games you've played, 0 or 600. If you're one of our best guys, this is where you play. If your play drops, then we can send you to the AHL and work your way back up. But if you're ready on day 1, you play on day 1. And this team has to have that perspective. It has to have the perspective of, if you got a taste of the playoffs last year, but if you want to be a playoff team in this league, for this team or any other team, your best players have to be on the ice every day, every game. Your best players. That's a tough division.
If this guy can help us right now, let's go. Get him in the lineup.
Yeah. And if he's not ready, there's no sin in that. There's no crime. If he starts the season here as a great preseason and a great training camp, and he starts here, but then falls off after 15 games, You don't have waiver problems. He's still on an entry-level contract. You send him down to Belleville, get some reps, continue in his readiness to be an NHL player. But if he's one of your, 4 best right-shot defensemen coming out of training camp in preseason, give him a jersey, give him skates, and he stays in Ottawa. That to me, that should no longer be a question. This team is not in a rebuild. This team is not on a development path. This team is how fast can we get wins and how many can we get right off the bat? That's number one.
Yeah, no, and look, I don't want to keep you too long, but I got one more for you here, Dean. I'm sort of curious. We saw last year Leevi Meriläinen step in and really, I don't want to overstate it, but you could make the argument, saved the season. When Ullmark got injured, I think it was around early or mid-December, he stepped in and he really carried the load and looked fine and looked ready. As we come into this season and Ullmark's back and healthy and a former Vezina winner, what would you imagine the split to be in an ideal world? If everybody stays healthy, where would you want to see these two guys kind of balance out in terms of the split?
Well, injury aside, if you take injuries out, I think you'd probably want to have Linus Ullmark play between 55 and 60 and Leevi Meriläinen or Matt Sogard play the rest. That I think that's kind of the groove you want to be in.
Do you think Meriläinen has passed Sogard?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And mostly because I think Matt's progress has been hampered because of his injuries.
Yes.
You look at the number of injuries and the number of games missed over the last 3 seasons. He hasn't become less talented. He's still an uber talented player, but at that age, you got to play, and he has not been able to get on the ice and stay on the ice for long enough periods of time. And in my opinion, Leevi has passed him in the development curve simply because Matt's has had trouble staying healthy. Doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Doesn't mean he doesn't work hard. Doesn't mean he's not committed. Just means that he's missed too many games. It's like Tyler Boucher. There's a guy that has a whole bunch of things, and you look at his skill set. You say this guy is a rugged power forward NHL kind of player. But you got to play games, and he just injury after injury after injury has really, pulled back his development. Well, it's the same for Matt Sogard, and I think, that's gone on. Leevi Meriläinen, since he came over, has continued. Like his last year in Finland, he was the youngest goaltender because he played in the men's league. He was the youngest goaltender in the league and set the league record for most shutouts in a season. So he was already playing men's level hockey, now not NHL or pro level hockey here, but men's level hockey, and was arguably the best goaltender in his league before he got here. And he just continued to develop and physically had a pretty good run. Wasn't in a situation where he missed any prolonged period of time with anything truly major that kept him out and impeded his progress. You can't say the same for Matt Sogard. Matt's has had, ongoing issues with different things, and it's really, really held back his development. And so, I don't mind saying at all that I think, Leevi is ahead of Matt's now on the progression chart, and that's nothing against either one of them. You can't help getting injured. No player goes out and tries to get injured, but it's a part of the game,
No, absolutely. And this is going to be a fascinating season for the Senators, as, they did take that step forward, and I don't think anybody's going to be content around the organization with just being that again. It's another step. It's time to, show that was for real and build on it. And I can't say as a fan of a divisional team that I'm excited about that, but I think that is the goal for the Senators. And I don't think it's unreasonable to say when you look around, I don't know how real the Habs thing was. I think they're coming. I'm not sure they have caught the Sens. The Leafs, I think, look likely to take a step back. The Bruins appear to be stepping back in a pretty clear way. But Tampa and Florida are still around, still a thing. It's going to be a tough division again. So I'm fascinated to see how this plays out. Maybe more than in the last few years. I don't think it's as clear cut. There was the top 4 and the bottom 4 for the last however long in this division. I think that's appears to be off the table for the next little while. We're going to see some transition here.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It is. And you know what? You're right. Every night you're going to see some great matchups within the division. And the thing that I really like is there's a couple of teams now in this division that really play a pugnacious style. Ottawa and Montreal. Montreal plays a very pugnacious style. That leads to hate, and hate leads to good hockey. It really does. Hate is good for hockey, and there's going to be plenty of it right in the division, and that's only good for those of us who like watching and talking hockey, because it leads to very, very entertaining games and very entertaining storylines from the start to the finish.
Well, my team has acquired Michael Pezzetta, so we're well set up for that, I guess.
Oh, that's going to fix everything.
That's going to fix it all, Dean. I appreciate you doing this, man. You're very kind every summer to make a little time. And this year, like normally we do it in person, but you were otherwise occupied. Then I was out of town. Hopefully, maybe before the season starts, we can find a little time to get you in studio. But as always, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you making some time for me here today.
Anytime, my friend, anytime.
Always a great chat with Dean. I sort of referenced it there as we were closing. Normally we do this in person. Dean had a couple things going on this summer. I was in and out of town all summer long. We weren't able to do that, but always willing to make a ton of time for us here, even if it was remotely, as it was this time. And some really cool insights there. Some interesting thoughts about USA Hockey and the way they are choosing to prioritize guys that they believe are going to be a part of the Olympic program this year, as opposed to bringing in some young guys, which they have done. Like Frank Nazar is there. There are some other young pieces. Luke Hughes is going to be there. But man, the Lane Hudson thing, as we sort of referenced, I think caught everybody off guard. But certainly to get Dean's input on how a couple of Ottawa Senators are becoming more and more intertwined with USA Hockey and sort of becoming long-time, I think, stalwarts here for years to come. Fans of Canadian hockey will not be happy to see on the international calendar USA and some major pieces from the Ottawa Senators helping that program try to run us over. Not looking forward to that. I'm never cheering for the Sens. I'm certainly not cheering for them when they're in red, white, and blue. Interesting to get his take on that and the quiet off season that it's been for the Senators and where they're hoping to go this year. So thank you as always to Dean Brown, and hope you guys enjoyed that. As I said, we will be back certainly later in the week with a news show with Steve Bunda, and if there's anything that jumps on the radar before then, we can always step back in and get into whatever that might be at the time. So hope you all enjoyed this one. Hope you all have a fantastic final week of the official part of summer. The forecast does look like a bit of a bummer, but enjoy it while you can, because we're not far off from it being a much bigger bummer. That's where we will put a bow on this one. Matt Robinson along with you. Thank you for listening. Appreciate your time. As always, let us know what you think on social media at Tall Can Audio, and make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you're hearing us now. And we'll catch you a little bit later on this week. Talk to you then.
It's CCA Summer Sessions.